One criticism that I always hear about Sonic Adventure 2 is that all the characters who mistake Sonic for Shadow seem really dumb. This complaint was especially prevalent among reviews in the 2010s, as critics and players alike were quick to both point out and subsequently mock how they look nothing alike, and I'd have to agree, they don't. I mean, how could anyone get these two confused aside from either a plot contrivance or developer oversight? The current consensus is that the whole Faker plot point was based off Shadow's original design, known as Terios, who bears a much closer resemblance to Sonic, a design which was presumably used for most of Sonic Adventure 2's development. And in true Sonic the Hedgehog fashion, this old design gained something of a cult following, so much so that it actually made its way into Sonic X Shadow Generations as a bonus costume for Shadow. Not too dissimilar from a certain Feels the Rabbit. It's been theorized that Terios' redesign into Shadow the Hedgehog occurred so late in development that they couldn't adjust the story to account for his new design, causing every character who confuses the two to appear rather silly. And this theory makes a ton of sense, as other elements of the game were haphazardly modified close to the game's release too. Most infamous of these are Sonic's soap shoes, with Sonic's ball model still retaining his traditional shoe design. But something about that theory just never sat right with me. This was Shadow's introduction to the series, and much of the game's conflict revolves around people confusing him for Sonic. The inciting incident of the game is Shadow framing Sonic. So then, I'd like to ask you, the viewer, a question. Who is this? If you said SpongeBob, then congratulations, you're just as stupid as Gun in SA2 because this isn't SpongeBob, this is Spongetron, a robotic sponge that robbed a jewelry store. As a viewer, it's really easy to poke fun at a doppelganger trope, but the fact of the matter is that when a person who isn't known to have a twin suddenly has one, it's pretty fair to assume that the original just decided to change their clothes, which makes far more logical sense than suddenly having a clone. And this ties directly into my theory. The reason why people confuse Sonic for Shadow in SA2? Yes, I'm serious. The plain and simple answer is that fictional goons and thieves often conceal their identity by wearing a ski mask or dark clothes. Granted, Shadow has a few distinct characteristics to make him stand out from Sonic: red highlights, a white tuft of fur on his chest, more angular quills which curve upward, and of course his air shoes, allowing him to skate rather than run, further distinguishing their silhouettes in motion, which, can I just say, was a phenomenal design choice from both a gameplay and design perspective. I will stress, however, that Shadow's unique design differences more so allow him to stand out to us as players, so he can be seen as more than just a simple Sonic recolor. Red highlights aside, Shadow's final design still looks like Sonic wearing a ski mask and spandex. Look at this costume for classic Sonic. Call me crazy, but I'm certain that a getup like this is what people thought Sonic was wearing back in SA2. I can even hear the 911 calls.
Describe the suspect.
You're not going to believe this, but he looked like Sonic the Hedgehog, except he was wearing white shoes and all black clothes.
Copy.
Of course, there was no such thing as a Shadow costume. Sure, there was no such thing as a Shadow costume back then, but if Sonic wanted to create an alter ego, he can just pull a literal Miles Morales by taking a regular morph suit, spray painting red highlights on it, and then changing his shoes. By that logic, this is about what I imagine he'd look like. Also, in current day, Sonic could easily frame Shadow if he just covered more of his face while wearing this. This also ties into another theory I have with some pretty dark undertones, but I'll try to keep this as lighthearted as possible. For some reason, when Tails is approaching Prison Island, he sees Eggman holding Amy at gunpoint. Now, as dark as that may be, it begs the question, what on earth was Amy doing there in the first place? Did she hear the news and try to break Sonic out of jail herself? If so, how did she get there? And how did she get there faster than Tails, no less? Before Heroes, Amy's character was often used as a stand-in for the everyday person, but what she didn't have in speed, smarts, or strength, she made up for with determination, heart, and a big ol' hammer. But with that characterization in mind, what if I told you that the unexplained reason why Amy is on Prison Island may have been a subtle hint at one of the darkest topics a Sonic game would ever cover? Whenever tragic events occur in the real world, such as populated areas and government buildings being attacked, unfortunately, people who share traits with the perpetrators often get caught in the mix despite having zero interest, much less ties to the aggressors. And here's a quick warning for those who may be sensitive. This behavior could be seen after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the World Trade Center, and most recently, the pandemic of 2020. People who could even be remotely associated with those tragedies by race, religion, or culture were and still are victims of prejudice, discrimination, and even unlawful detainment. So what does this have to do with Amy? Well, since one hedgehog had apparently gone rogue, Gunn could have had a knee-jerk reaction and declared that all hedgehogs were now a threat. You know who else is a hedgehog? Amy. While Sonic was busy with one of the greatest stages in series history, poor Amy was probably getting swatted and taken to Prison Island. Remember how I said that Amy was the everyday person of the group? Well, in the case of SA2, she very well could have represented the innocent people who get caught in the crossfire of a tragedy, oftentimes in a literal sense. This concept isn't even outside the realm of possibility. Darker themes and undertones were the backbone of Sonic games at the time. In fact, a lot of the best family entertainment is so beloved because of its ability to cover rather grim topics in such a tactful way. My favorite example of a Sonic game doing this was in The Secret Rings, which had allusions to the dangers of an abusive relationship. I have no doubt in my mind that subtle hints at the effects of widespread discrimination caused by the hysteria of a tragedy was too far-fetched a topic for a Sonic game at the time. I could also be reading way too deep into this, but as if that's not what you're here for. Either way, my new headcanon is that Amy was wrongfully detained by Gunn and taken to Prison Island, but she managed to escape from her prison cell only to be caught by Eggman, which is where we see Tails fly into the cutscene. This wouldn't be her first escape routine either. She had already managed to talk Gamma into opening her cell in SA1, and if we use the games following SA2 as a point of reference, then we'll have yet another bafflingly consistent quirk in the Sonic series. Remember when Amy managed to rescue Elise in 06? Listen, once is happenstance, twice is a coincidence, 3 times is a pattern. Amy Rose is a professional escape artist. But what are your thoughts? Do you still think the Faker plot is too contrived? What about my theory for why Amy was on Prison Island? How do you feel about Sonic's in-game stories being blacklisted for over a decade despite the following? Kingdom Hearts, Adventure Time, Gravity Falls, Regular Show, BoJack Horseman, and most offensively, Sonic SatAM, also known as Sonic the Hedgehog. No, the Goofy Slapstick Show was the spin-off. This was Sonic the Hedgehog. The dark themes in the adventure games were out of place. This was Sonic the Hedgehog. Anyway, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe to see the next post as soon as it goes live. Alright, take care.